Yeah, so on was it Saturday or Saturday morning? I sat on the sofa with Otis, so he's been coming down. We've been having a cuddle watching the cricket together, and we're having a bit of a chat. And I'm like, "Are you going to play cricket when you're older?" And he looks at me with absolute sheer horror. And after watching Stokes get hit in the box, and goes, "No, I don't want to get hit in the winky." Literally, he's terrified of watching cricket now because of Stokes being bent over, fitting it in the box.
Oh no.
So I'm like, of all the things that have like gone wrong, or like English fans may not be enjoying, like that's been the thing that's put him off playing cricket. I was just
And
like,
why
oh
is
no.
it? Why is it we all watch that and we all still laugh and we all know how painful that is and how terrible it is, but we're all still giggling away in the background.
It's like as three
Terrible.
years old, he knows it hurts. It's like, yeah, Jesus,
It's inbuilt. It's inbuilt.
yeah,
Uh,
protective mechanisms. But yeah, right. Shall we make a start on reviewing what we've just watched over the weekend? So I think the question that's on everybody's mind is what's happened to the bowling attack that we saw in the first innings at Perth, and what we saw maybe in that second innings at Perth, and then what's followed on in the first innings at Brisbane. I think the second innings at Brisbane's too short to kind of make anything out of. But yeah, what's happened, do you think?
yeah, I mean, it just looks like all of a sudden, they're out of a bit of a rhythm. They're out a bit of nick. If you look, as we talked about in the previous podcasts, that first hour, that first session, that first day at Perth was unbelievable. That's as good a opening hours we've seen from a unit bowling for England for a long time. And to go from that and then obviously this test to be a bit scattergun, a bit over the place. Sometimes you're not sure whether it's because we're trying too hard. We're trying too hard to take wickets immediately when we know that as a bowler, sometimes you need to settle into that length a bit to start with. Are we looking to go searching early on? Are we trying, because we're under pressure, we're not scoring so many runs, are we trying to take wickets too quickly before we can settle in? Is our rhythm just slightly out a little bit? Are we as a unit, doing the wrong things, not quite working to our plans that we've talked about? And these are all the different things that I'm sure, over the next couple of days they'll be chatting about. But we were talking about rhythm earlier, Shiny. What were your take on looking at bowlers who are slightly out of rhythm? What would you do first with them, do you reckon?
I mean, you always know when they're out of rhythm, don't you? Something's not right in sort of almost your set plans. I mean, let's not get too far away from the start of every game. You tend to try and hunt off stump as much as you can to a slightly fuller length. I mean, that it doesn't matter where you are. That's where you're going to start with a brand new ball. So what would I do? Generally, I'm sort of quite a proactive coach, and I've got that agreement with my bowlers. They're quite happy for me to wander down if I spot anything, or even if it's just a conversation about how you can get back on track. Because let's face it, 2 hours in a game is a lot, isn't it? A lot can happen in that time. A team can get away from you, and it also then means that the momentum's built even for the second session and maybe the third session. So I'm a big believer in if I can, I get down there quickly.
Can I come in on that? It's a really interesting point because I was asked by a coach the other day about if you spot something technically during a game, would you actually interject and would you go and speak to that bowler? And my response to that was, well, that's my job, isn't it? Why would I sit there and watch a bowler perform badly for 2 hours if I've actually got something that can help him correct it immediately and him start bowling better again? And I mean, I learned that obviously when I came down with you and we had that relationship that you were happy to come and speak to me as your bowler and the work that we've done. And I learned that you could say one or two things to me and immediately my bowling could start getting better again. And that's what I wanted to do. So as a coach, surely that's what you want to do. But
I mean, that's where cricket's different from rugby and football, isn't it? They can get messages out. I mean, obviously the manager can stand on the line and actually shout out his instructions, can't he? I mean, I know cricket's not there, and that's absolutely fine. But the beauty about bowling is that generally one of your bowlers will be on the boundary. So apart from the fact that when you walk around, you might get an earful from the crowd, which I actually quite enjoy that, to be fair. You've got a chance just to go and check. And realistically, it's not always technical. It's not. It's a timing thing. Sometimes it's, you just might not be in the right mindset. You might have just forgotten something that calms you down. You might be running in really, really hard. Sometimes you can say, well, I mean, so if it's a lefty, look, have you tried over the wicket? just give it a try. It's just a new direction, new setup, new perspective, or around the wicket, whatever it is. Sometimes, are you on your wobble or are you on your swing grip? You can go through a bit of a troubleshoot with them. Now, I knew as a bowler, we generally didn't get masses of people coming around, but I remember the 12th man used to come round, and generally it's always a bowler who's 12th man, isn't there? So they would come round and they'd just give you something, mate, how you going? You look like you're running in hard there.
Let's
You
be
could
honest,
just
in those days, mate,
ease
it
off
was
a bit.
probably, did you want curry or Chinese that night? That was probably
Well,
the question
it was
that
a
was
bit of
asked
that.
most of the
There's a
time.
bit of that. What's on the drinks list? But I firmly believe, once again, if your bowler's okay with it, remember that's part of your relationship building. If they're okay for you to come down and say, look, how are you going? I would say a lot of times I just go and they don't even spot you've come up, and you just say, how are you going? You all right? And then you can start the conversation from there. It might be that there are different bowlers that I have a different relationship with. I can literally just leave a little still on in the on feedback cricket. Yeah, so it might be that I actually have to look on feedback cricket. I'll leave a still of the position they're in, and I'll just say, look, just have a quick look at that and see how you go. But it'll be something that we've worked on during our development sessions, so that it's very, very clear.
I think something you mentioned earlier is building your environment as a coach. So if you're going in, you've been there long enough now that you've gone in there, you'll take constant footage. You won't necessarily show the bowlers when you first go there the footage, but they see you taking footage. Then all of a sudden they want to know what's on the footage. They want to know about it. And then all of a sudden you build those relationships, that you build that trust in. You're not just saying things for the sake of it. You're actually saying things because it's there to help. And then once you build that environment and that trust in that person, during a game, you feel like you can go and help. And that's what we're there for, isn't it? We're there as coaches who, we want to help people. We want to support people and make them, help get them better.
Yeah, I mean, from a team perspective, that's important, but also from the bowler's perspective, that's important. But you've got to be sure what you're going to say. You can't just go and guess, or do the old. I'm going to pluck something out of the air here. You sort your front arm out. That's normally one of the favourites, isn't it? So yeah, I mean that's really important. Looking at this England side, this side has been developed over sort of McCullum and Key's tenure, hasn't it? They've gathered a lot of information from the Hawkeye cameras that the umpires are using, so there's a decent sample size there. They've had all of their performance analysis team do some really, really in-depth research about the paces that are actually successful to win Ashes and test matches in general. And actually, this is the attack that they've come up with. And I look at this attack and seriously exciting. Genuinely, I love watching them. I mean, watching them at Perth was just unbelievable. When you consider the bowlers they haven't got playing as well in Tongue and Potts, who are all very, very exciting bowlers in their own right. And we've obviously rested Woody in this one. Hopefully he comes back into the next test. But they're not a keep it tight attack, are they? They are an attacking group that look to get wickets. But that's what Key and McCullum have been developing. So, that's what they've developed. That's the team that they've gone in with. And it's a really interesting conversation, isn't it? Because great attacks are built over time. This is a pretty young, inexperienced attack.
Yeah, it is. I think, obviously, they're way better than what they showed in this last test match, without a shadow of a doubt. We've seen the good side against Perth, and we've probably seen the worst side in this last. So somewhere in the middle is probably about the right place to start, isn't it? And I think with any bowler, you have to find that rhythm early. And if that rhythm clicks early, you can play around with your lengths and your lines. If you go straight in searching for those wickets, straight in trying to get people driving, it's amazing how quickly you can go for a couple of fours and how the rhythm can just completely go out of your action. The confidence isn't there, and you can just lose it quite quickly. And it almost, just from watching it, that's how it looked a little bit. Just looked like we were on the front foot too early without getting into our rhythms and getting into our areas that we like, and then sort of go from there and sort of build your innings, build your spell, build your 6 overs, 7 overs, sort of all in at the start.
Yeah, and England showed that, didn't they? So Crawley obviously in the first innings looked to put the bowlers under the pump a bit, and then second innings they came out and it was 6 overs, wasn't it? Before that tea break, and then it was a tough time to bat, really tough time to bat. They timed it beautifully, hadn't they, to be bowling under lights. But the way they batted actually put the Aussies under the pump a little bit. Um, and generally, I think that's what happens in Test matches now, doesn't it? But as they showed as it went through, and if you look at the attack, it did seem that the Aussies had, an attack that they all had their roles. So I've just written a few notes down here. Stark, he obviously attacks, but he's almost earned the right to hold now because his lines are so good, whether he's swinging it back or wobbling it. Boland was just tight, relentless lines, not express pace. Then you had Nisa, who bowled straight, keeper up if needed, but was quite aggressive with his lengths, wasn't he? The odd bumper, try and
Yeah,
keep them back, and then he'd go back up. Dogger starts with traditional lines and lengths. In Shield cricket, he can swing it. And he was the guy that they said if it was a bumper plan, you go to it. It was actually a bit more of a traditional type of attack rather than all out smash you to pieces pace.
yeah. And as we sort of know that sometimes when you're bowling at high pace and you're just slightly off it, it doesn't take a lot, does it? The
Especially on
batters can
wickets
get
that
away.
bounce. Weird angles,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
All of a sudden, the angles are going, the ball's flying off in different directions. You feel under pressure. You bowl more bad balls, and it becomes this real build up of the performance that we probably saw. To be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Just before we bring Feltz back in, Jono. So if you'd have been there on that, the first sort of the first two sessions that they bowled, what would you have sort of tried to say as a coach when they came in to give them the sort of the help them get to the why and then hopefully give them a how to get back into the game?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this a lot in the past. It's a very individual thing, that isn't it? And it's understanding each individual bowler of what makes him tick and what information, as you spoke about earlier, what he actually wants. But if I was doing it from my Middlesex days, for example, where I knew the bowlers very well, you'd be able to go to a Toby Roden-Jones, for example, and you knew what made him tick, and you'd be asking the question about, how you feeling, what feels slightly off. Can you feel that you're rushing through? Are you rushing through a little bit? Do you feel upright? Just some of the sort of leading questions, I suppose, for him, knowing his action. And then he just has to say, oh, actually, I just feel off it a little bit. And then you go, right, okay, so how do we repair that? And you know how to repair it. So you start talking about that. So you sort of go through your bowlers in that sort of way. And you
So you would
find
be
out whether it is.
troubleshooting them.
You'd be troubleshooting.
Yeah.
I'd be finding out whether, firstly, if it is a technical thing, which sometimes it can be, quite often it can be, or is it that he needs to come from the other end? He might have bowled one end and it's not the end that suits him. It might have just put his rhythm out a little bit. It might be uphill and he's not quite getting to the crease. It might be as simple as, is he running in a bit too fast, or is he not running in quick enough? Is he not attacking the crease more? So with the GPS systems now, you can see the run-up speeds and you should know pretty much where each bowler is run-up wise, speed-wise. So it's knowing your bowler a little bit, and it's knowing the little bits of his action that actually get him in a good place that you can ask the right questions.
See, that's an interesting thing, isn't it, Johnny? Because whenever we try and troubleshoot with the lads, I generally have something in my mind, which will be, first of all, find out how they feel. So you're asking them, how you feeling in your run-up? And they'll give you a decent clue. Then you're going, well, how you feeling on release? There's a little clue for the balance as well. Tell me what the ball's doing. So what's it doing in the air? Then tell me what's it doing off the pitch. Then tell me how you think the batters are playing. I don't normally chuck all of that in there, but that's basically bowling when you're getting a feel of, okay, so how are they process-wise up to release? Then what's happening to the ball? So, if they're desperately trying to swing it and you're actually saying, well, it might not be a swingy day. You might have to go to your wobble today. And then the pitch, is it bouncy? Is it not bouncy? Maybe you have to change your lengths a little bit. Once again, we're going back to this troubleshooting. You're able to get them to focus. And then, is the guy really deep in the crease? Is he looking to come down at you? All those things that refocus. And I would say that that's something that I've used as a tool, but as I say, you might not give them all of those at once, just maybe one or two, just to say, can you refocus? If you can't, if there's nothing glaringly sort of hitting you between the eyes with technique.
Yeah, and it's really interesting with the technical side of things, because you think about how many overs you bowl in the summer, how many days you play cricket, how many times you're out on the pitch. There's so many different factors that can affect your rhythm and your technique of how the ball comes out, and it can be as simple as uphill, downhill, wind,
Yeah,
footholds,
yeah,
umpire standing in a position you don't want him to, and
yeah.
he won't move. Silly
Mate,
things like that.
footholes are massive. Footholes are
Yeah,
massive, aren't they? What
yeah,
what what advice
absolutely.
would you give for footholes?
Oh, geez. Get the groundsman out, dig it out, please. give me,
Well,
give me a
it
big
is.
saucer.
It's a very real thing, mate. That was my absolute nemesis. Footholes. Oh, they're a nightmare.
You go off to cover and back round again when you're in a bit of a huff with footholds, wouldn't you?
Then I'd
Yeah, I
come in
remember
and
that.
absolutely kick them to death. Then I'd blame it
Yeah,
on. I'd
that's it.
blame
The
it on.
groundsman would be
I'd
on the
blame it on
side giving it
anything but
that one.
me. Yeah, but
But there's so
there
many
is a
factors
set.
that can come in, and you bowl so long in a season that you're going to get little bad habits that creep in at times. You're going to feel a little bit of fatigue at times, so your rhythm or your pace to the wickets slightly off. So there's lots of little things that you need to check over to find out how your bowler's going on that particular day.
Yeah, I did actually listen to Broady having a, he was doing one of his podcasts, and he was talking about the fact that it didn't seem that there was an awful lot of communication. And to be fair, him and Jimmy were the absolute sort of masters. You always saw them talking, didn't you? I remember when Jimmy
Yeah,
and Broady used to come to Potch to practice for like a week at a time when we used to take the young fast bowlers out. And even in practice, they were talking about what they were trying to do with the ball or what they'd seen with the batter. They were constantly
yeah.
communicating. I think that's a really healthy thing to do, isn't it?
They became amazing at assessing conditions very quickly. Is this a swing
Mm.
day? Is this a seam day? Is it a wobble day? Is it what length do we need to
Yeah,
bowl to contain, to take wickets? Constantly looking at it. They were proper students of the game, weren't they?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Felt anything that we've missed there?
I literally just wrote down, does your troubleshooting start on the field in great teams? So do you have good players like your greats? And then I was thinking Jimmy and Broady, do they help troubleshoot? And then you had Wokesy. And this England side is quite inexperienced in terms of the leaders on the field within the bowling attack. And it's probably your captain's probably the most experienced, which may add another element. Whereas you look at the Aussies, they've got Stark, haven't they? So my question would be to both of you, like both as a bowlers and a coach, like do you are you able to troubleshoot with your players or coach your players to troubleshoot on the field if you can't get to them or speak to them during sessions?
Again, I'll say almost a little bit what I said earlier around the environment that you set. So if you are someone who will take video constantly, the players are interested in it. You talk about their actions. You talk about what makes them tick. They understand it. They get it. Then you are creating a bowler that understands his own action. When you understand your own action, and you spend a period of time going over it and feeling those little things, you can tell yourself when something's not quite right. And if you've got your little checklist, well, is it this? Is it this? And is it this? You can put it together yourself generally. Absolutely.
Yeah, but what we're also saying as coaches as well is if that's not happening, because remember when you're out there in the white heat of battle, sometimes it just doesn't happen, does it? And if you've got some information, what we're saying is get out there as
Yeah, I
quick
think
as you can and help them out.
I think my question was more is can the bowling group help troubleshoot each other's
That's the best way
issues?
to do it because it'll happen quicker, won't it?
Yeah.
So that's my question is like can you actually create a bowling unit which help with the coach involved that helps create or troubleshoot on the field, watching each other's bowling actions and stuff like that, and do the great
And it,
sides do that?
and let's go back to this last test. They are a very inexperienced side. They haven't spent an awful lot of overs in the field together. Remember, Jimmy and Broady, they had so many overs together, didn't they? That would be a frightening stat to come up with. But it was also their way. It was their way. They were, master tacticians, weren't they? I mean, especially Broady is, it's a joke how he used to, tactically go through players. That was the bit that he really enjoyed. Jimmy
Yeah.
just had that sort of incisive way of then sort of almost breaking them down technically with his skills. But the two together were probably the best communicators pretty much
Yeah.
there's ever been about the game.
I think I think the other thing that it felt, a person who I relied a lot on the pitch. So before I played at Somerset with Shiney, no sort of real fast bowling helps. So you relied on the senior players in your team. So I had Angus Fraser, obviously, who just used to moan at me and say bowl straight. But other than that, you'd have your keeper. Your keeper was really important because your keeper would pick things up, pick cues up that how the ball's coming out that weren't necessarily technical, but if he said, "Oh, you look like you're not really attacking the crease today," or "Your follow through isn't as straight as it normally is," or "You look like you're just off the side of it," you could sort of then piece it together yourself. So I always found the keeper in those days was a really
Yeah.
important person for me.
So AD Ames, my keeper at Hampshire, you know me, John. I
It'd
used to
just
get.
be saying to you, "Pitch it up, mate. Will you just
No,
pitch it up?
no,
Stop bowling short."
it was even worse than that. It was genuinely worse than that. So I used to, we used to go for one or two fours, which regularly used to happen to me, especially early on in my career. And you're looking up and you're thinking, I'm having a shock at it. And it was always lack of concentration. I just wasn't on it. AD Ames used to scream out from where he was as keeper, Shiny, no more cornettos. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, a cornetto is a big ice cream that I used to serve up somewhere in my first over. But I know it's stupid, but it worked. It absolutely worked. So once again, if we go to the serious side of this, it's having a cue that allows you to get into the game. And I reckon that's one of the biggest issues for younger, especially younger fast bowlers or inexperienced fast bowlers or bowlers who are a little bit nervous because it's a massive occasion. Remember, Brisbane, they call it the Gabbatoir for a reason. It is one hell of a cauldron. It's having that cue to say, all right, the most important thing is getting into the game. Once you get your first over under your belt, if you've actually bowled that well, it's amazing how much more comfortable you feel. And that's one that, especially with younger bowlers, you try to give them a way to get into the game. And it's not a defensive way. It's a right. What's your method? What do you need to be able to make sure you're absolutely on it? Now, some days you're going to be stiff. Generally, if it's a second over or if you're well into a season, so you got to get past that bit first. So physically, how do you actually get yourself prepped? Then mentally, how do you make sure, especially nowadays, someone like Duckett or Crawley, who will look to absolutely kill you if you're overpitched or if you're short and wide, so that you can get into the game. And that's how your good spells come about.
So yeah, Shani, I know when we worked together on coach development, we talked a lot about, or you talked a lot about making players comfortable, uncomfortable. So we talked a bit there about there being lots of things that get you out of rhythm. Like what could you practice in training to get you used to them or finding ways out of them?
Yeah, we all know. I mean, John, I'll ask you the question, mate, and you're a miles better bowler than me. How many days do you reckon you bowled in perfect rhythm, yeah, as opposed to out of rhythm?
Ah, I used to speak to all the Middlesex bowlers and Surrey bowlers about the same thing. The days that you're in rhythm are a handful in a whole summer. So you might bowl 500 overs in a summer. You can count them on one hand in days that actually felt absolutely brilliant. Eyes shut, run up, bowl it, feels brilliant out the hand, land it where you want to, and everything feels great, right? That's a handful. The rest of the time is this bit under here. And it's the bit that, what can I do today to get through this day by not going for runs, but picking up my wickets? And it's working that bit out. And the closer you get that bottom bit to the top bit, they're the greats, because the greats are the same. They don't feel great every day. It's a handful of times, but they're not so great is still bloody good. And it's
Yeah.
working out how you can get to that not so great part, but
And
still feel and do a job.
so that leads to the question. It's a brilliant answer. It leads to the question: why do we try to practice in brilliant rhythm the whole time when most of the time we're actually out of rhythm? So I I don't. I used to a while back. I tried to set up sort of practices that would throw you out of rhythm, whether you stick something in there, run up or whatever, to throw them out of rhythm. I don't do that anymore. That was me just sort of playing with the game, kind of get things to work. What I actually do, believe it or not, is when we're actually having technical work-ons, I get them to bowl at batters as quickly as possible. So we effectively try and get as much in as we can technically without any pressure from an external source, i.e. the batter trying to smash you. And I get them in against batters really quickly. And generally, it can be a struggle. It really can be. But I don't mind that because they're really having to work hard to see if they can get the skill to stick. But also, they're having to bowl generally out of rhythm, which is a really good thing because you're learning to actually stay in the game. We have AI full track running in a lot of our sessions. Once they get to a point when I'm happy for them to see it, we actually then put that on so they can go back and have a look at it. But remember, there's one thing you're trying to get a bowler to be in, which is flow. Yeah, we know that before flow is struggle generally, so that is okay. You can struggle away to get towards flow. Jono and I would be, in UFELs, we'd be looking for some technical pluses that will get them to flow a little bit quicker. But I never worry if they're in struggle, as long as they've got something positive to take away from that session. And that's the coach's job to help them get something from there. Remember, we always talk about that's where they were, that's where you want to get them to. Anywhere along that line is success. Yeah, as long as we're managing that part of it. But I believe in putting them in. Well, bowling coaches put bowlers in harm's way. We put them in harm's way every time they go out there physically. Yeah, their technique can break down, and mentally it is bloody tough. But it's our job to put them in those situations so they learn that when we're not there, they're out there in front of 50, 60,000 people. Yeah, that they've been there before somewhere, so they've got some of the skills to get out of it.
And also, just going on that with a practice, give them non-favourable conditions in a practice. Give them a dog ball. Give them a net that's uphill into the wind rather than downhill with the wind. Get them behind the line every ball. Just little things that when you're practicing, when you're warming up and stuff like that, you always want to feel comfortable and you want to feel everything that feels good and makes you feel good. And as we've just said, that happens so rarely in the game. You need to perform when it doesn't feel great. So we need to practice that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is that the link between conscious and unconscious competence and getting into flow and unflow and taking it from a science term into coaching language quite nicely.
I think that's another brilliant podcast, that one, Phelps, where we actually, when you're looking at that side of it, that would be a really interesting one to explore because there's more to bowling than just sticking up some poles. If you decide to use poles, there's a time and a place for that, and I imagine we'll have that conversation about how you train your players. But that's something completely different. I think with regards to this Ashes bowling attack. It's been a really, really tough couple of games. I think positives everywhere, though, and we've always got to look at those. Obviously, the first innings in Perth, then you actually watch Jofra. Now, I know they say, where there was nothing on the game, but crikey, it was unbelievable to watch. 150 clicks. I actually thought Gus Atkinson looked pretty good, John. What did you think in this game?
Yeah, I think Gus generally, as we've just spoken about, his bad is not actually that bad. Gus, he doesn't really bowl bad spells particularly. He's pretty consistent. He bangs away at good lines, good lengths, nibbles it around a bit. I think he's an outstanding bowler. He's actually very underrated in my eyes.
I mean, he's as
And
close to
then,
your sort of control bowler that
but
you
with
could
pace,
get at the
yeah,
moment. Yeah,
yeah. No, I agree. I love him. I think he's very good. I think obviously Cast was the big one that was completely out of sync. And again, he's bowled well in the last game, and I think it's,
yeah,
as I said, I think sometimes it can be just trying too hard, running in too fast, running in too hard, not
absolutely.
not holding your positions. But it's I think it gets accentuated when there's such an attacking unit as well. If you're happy to settle in and set fields and actually not go for runs for a period of time and just try and settle into that, but it's not what the ethos is, and that's fair enough. That's what they want to do and how they want to set it up. But it's quite hard as a bowler once that momentum gets away from you and the ball's flying all over the place. It's hard as a group to just bring it back in, like this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that leads to in international sides, what is the formation of your attack? And that's another question. I think Kesey and McCullum have tried to use some solid pace metrics to pick this side. But it actually showed with Nisa getting 5 for. He's not bowled that quick in this game, has he? But he's bowled really well, and that comes back to, we're going to do coaching philosophies in the future. I don't coach pace anymore. It's much more important that I coach skill and bowling well. And that's, it's not just bowl fast. Actually, just bowl better. And somewhere along there, the fast is going to come, but you've got to let them actually work out, how important being fast is to them. I think Nisa showed that being aggressive, just being relentless and having he had the keeper up. How many fast bowlers like to have the keeper up? I'm pretty sure that, that actually then kept some pretty aggressive batters in their crease, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
There was something that came out a few years ago about, oh yeah, we're looking for impact bowlers, and I could never get my head around like this impact bowler. What you mean? You want someone just to run up and bowl quick? It doesn't matter how many runs they go for. Because in my eyes, an impact bowler is a bloke who runs up, hits good areas, takes wickets, doesn't go for runs. That's impacting the game. That's an impact bowler.
it's a good
Doesn't matter
impact.
what
That's a
pace
strong
it is.
impact.
It's an
Yeah.
impact bowler.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Science and Shiny podcast, brought to you by Fast Bowlers Limited. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow the show, share it with others, and leave a review. It really helps us grow. You can also watch a full video episodes on YouTube and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for more clips and updates. We'll see you in the next episode.